The great chamber of the Galactic Council was filled with silence as the final numbers appeared on the glowing display. 847 votes in favor, 3 votes against. The decision was made. Humanity would be expelled from the Galactic Union. Ambassador Linda Morrison stood alone at the human delegation's platform. She was a tall woman with gray hair and calm eyes. Around her, representatives from nearly 1,000 different alien species watched with different expressions. Some looked satisfied. Some looked bored. A few looked worried. High Chancellor Vextorin of the Zelethi Dominion rose from his central seat. He was a large reptilian creature with shining scales that changed color in the light. His voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. The humans have proven themselves incapable of following civilized rules. They expand too aggressively. They refuse to share their military technologies with the rest of us. They act too independently from our collective government. We have no choice but to remove them. Linda simply nodded her head. We understand. The chamber stirred with surprise. Many delegates leaned forward in their seats. They had expected the humans to argue, to threaten, to show the famous stubbornness that everyone had heard about. Delegate. Morodak of the Fantari Collective made a sneering sound. He was a tall, thin creature with 4 arms and eyes that glowed with inner light. That is all you have to say? No demands? No negotiations. No, Linda said in a calm voice. If the Council believes it no longer needs humanity, we accept your decision. We will leave all joint operations. We will bring our people home from shared stations. We will close our borders within 90 standard days. She gathered her documents from the platform. They were actual paper, which many aliens found strange. Humans liked old things sometimes. Linda walked toward the exit. Her footsteps were the only sound in the massive chamber. At the door, she stopped and turned back to face the Council one last time. When you change your minds, she said, and you will change your minds, the terms will be different. The doors closed behind her with a soft hiss. Nervous laughter spread through the chamber. Several delegates made jokes about human arrogance. The humans were gone. The galaxy could finally move forward without their disruptive influence. High Chancellor Vextorin smiled widely, showing rows of sharp teeth. Now, let us discuss how we will divide the territories and trade routes that humanity once controlled. There is much wealth to be claimed. The delegates began talking excitedly among themselves. Trade routes meant money. Territories meant power. Everyone wanted their share of what the humans were leaving behind. But in the back row of the chamber, a small figure sat in worried silence. Her name was Ithasol, and she was a Korthi. Her species was small and quiet, with soft fur and large dark eyes. They were known for their long memories and their love of ancient records. Ithasol had voted against the expulsion. She was one of only 3 delegates who had done so. Now she watched the celebration around her with a feeling of deep fear in her chest. She had spent many years reading old records, documents from thousands of years ago that most species had forgotten. She had found fragments of information that troubled her greatly. Those fragments mentioned a species that had once lived on a small blue world at the edge of the galaxy. A species that had faced something terrible in the ancient past. A species that had saved everyone else, though no one remembered anymore. Humans, the records were incomplete. Much had been lost to time, but what remained told a story that made Ithasol's blood run cold. She tried to speak up several times during the vote. She tried to warn the council about what she had found, but no one listened to the Korathi. They were too small, too quiet, too unimportant. Now it was too late. Ithasol watched High Chancellor Vextorn divide up human territories. It's like a child dividing candy. She watched Delegate Morodak claim the best trade routes for his people. She watched everyone celebrate their victory over the humans, and she wondered how long it would take for them to understand their mistake. On the other side of the galaxy, Linda Morrison sat alone in her quarters aboard the diplomatic vessel that would carry her home to Earth. She had removed her formal ambassador's jacket and sat in a simple white shirt, looking out the window at the stars. Her assistant, a young man named Kevin Park, entered with a cup of coffee. He set it down beside her and stood waiting. How did it go? he asked, though he already knew the answer. Everyone knew, exactly as we expected, Linda said. She did not turn from the window. They voted us out. We are no longer members of the Galactic Union. Kevin sat down across from her. Are you okay? Linda finally turned to look at him. Her expression was strange. Not sad, not angry. Something else entirely. Do you know how long we have been preparing for this day? She asked. Kevin shook his head. 73 years, Linda said. Since before I was born, since before my mother was born, we knew this would happen eventually. The Council has always resented us. We were too different, too independent, too unwilling to follow their rules. She picked up the coffee and took a small sip. We tried to tell them in the beginning. We tried to explain why we needed our military secrets, why we built so many ships, why we trained so many soldiers. They would not listen. They called us paranoid. They called us savages. So we stopped explaining, Kevin said quietly. Yes, we stopped explaining and started preparing. Linda set down her cup. Now the preparation is complete. We have everything we need. Our colonies are self-sufficient. Our defenses are strong. Our people are ready. Ready for what? Linda looked back out at the stars. Somewhere out there, in the darkness between galaxies, something ancient was stirring. Something that had not been seen in 10,000 years. Something that the rest of the galaxy had forgotten, but humanity never had. For what is coming, she said simply. Kevin wanted to ask more questions. But something in Linda's voice told him that the conversation was over. He stood up and walked toward the door. Kevin! Linda called after him. He turned back. Yes, Ambassador. When we get home, I want you to send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them to begin final preparations. The timeline has moved up. Kevin felt a chill run down his spine. He did not fully understand what was happening, but he understood enough to be afraid. Yes, Ambassador. I will send the message immediately. He left the room, and Linda turned back to the stars. She thought about the council members celebrating their victory. She thought about the territories they were dividing, the trade routes they were claiming. Let them celebrate, she thought. Let them enjoy their triumph. They would learn soon enough. They would all learn. Humanity had tried to protect the galaxy in secret for over a century. They had built fleets and trained soldiers and developed weapons that no one else had ever seen. They had done all of this while being mocked and resented and misunderstood. Now they were walking away. Not out of anger, not out of spite, simply because they could no longer do their job. While being constantly undermined, the galaxy had voted to expel its protectors. And somewhere in the void between stars, ancient eyes turned toward the light of 1 trillion suns. The harvesters were waking up. And this time, humanity would not be there to stop them, at least. Not right away. 6 months passed after humanity left the Galactic Union. At first, nothing seemed different. The Council continued its meetings. Trade continued between worlds. Life went on as it always had. Then the problems began. It started with small things. A pirate fleet attacked a Zealothi convoy near the Outer Rim. This was not unusual. Pirates had always existed in the dark corners of space, but the response to such attacks had always been swift. Human patrol ships, operating under joint defense agreements, would arrive within hours. They would destroy the pirates and rescue the survivors. This time, no one came. The Zealothi sent their own fleet, but it took 3 days to arrive. By then, the pirates were gone. 40,000 tons of rare minerals had vanished with them. The convoy crew was dead. High Chancellor Vextorn was furious. He demanded to know why the response had been so slow. We no longer have access to human sensor networks, his military advisor explained. They detected threats before we even knew they existed. Without their systems, we are blind until someone sends a distress signal. Then build our own sensors, Vextorn ordered. We are trying. But human sensor technology is very advanced. Our scientists estimate it will take 50 years to match their capabilities. The Chancellor's scales turned a dark shade of red. This was a sign of anger among his species. But there was nothing he could do except wait. On the trade station called Nexus Prime, a human named Greg Patterson faced a different kind of problem. He was one of the few humans who had chosen to stay behind when Earth recalled its citizens. He ran the station's environmental systems, a job that no one else wanted because it was difficult and boring. Greg had worked on the station for 20 years. He knew every pipe, every filter, every circuit in the life support grid. He had kept millions of beings alive without anyone ever thanking him. Now he stood in the office of Station Commander Rilveth, trying to explain a serious problem. "The atmospheric processors need recalibration," Greg said. He held a tablet showing technical readings. "The oxygen mix is drifting. If we do not fix it soon, everyone who breathes oxygen will start getting sick." Rilveth was a minthari, a species that breathed a different gas mixture. She floated in her support tank, her tentacles waving slowly in the liquid. She did not look concerned. "Our engineers can handle it," she said dismissively. "With respect, Commander, they cannot. We installed this system. We maintained it for decades. Your engineers have never even seen inside the main processing unit." Greg set his tablet on her desk. "I can train them. I can show them everything they need to know. But someone needs to actually listen to me." Rilveth's tentacles twitched with irritation. "This is exactly the kind of human arrogance that led to your expulsion. You believe you are the only ones who can do anything correctly." Greg stared at her for a long moment. He thought about the years he had spent on this station. The long nights fixing broken systems, the emergencies he had handled alone while everyone else slept, the countless lives he had saved without anyone knowing. "Fine," he said quietly. "I quit." He submitted his resignation that evening. 1 week later, he was on the last transport to human space. He did not look back as the station shrank behind him. 3 months after Greg left, Nexus Prime was evacuated. The atmospheric processors failed completely. A cascade of system errors spread through the station like a disease. 17,000 beings died before rescue ships could arrive. Another 50,000 suffered permanent lung damage. Station Commander Rilveth survived. She would spend the rest of her life wondering if she should have listened to the human across the galaxy. Similar stories played out. Infrastructure that humans had built began to fail. Medical treatments that human researchers had developed became unavailable. Peace agreements that human diplomats had negotiated started to collapse. On the planet Vareth, a disease called the Grey Plague began spreading through the population. Human medical teams had developed a cure for this disease 30 years ago, but the humans who knew how to make the cure were gone. The formula existed in old records, but no one could understand the human scientific notation. 2 million. Varati died before someone finally figured out how to read the documents. On the border between the Zelathi Dominion and the Karathi Federation, an old territorial dispute flared up again. Human diplomats had negotiated a peace agreement between these two species 50 years ago. Now, with no one to mediate, both sides began moving warships into the disputed zone. War seemed inevitable until Ambassador Ithasol, the old Karathi delegate, managed to arrange emergency talks. She prevented a war, but just barely, and she knew that there were dozens of other disputes throughout the galaxy, all waiting to explode. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The Great Chamber was filled with frightened and angry delegates. "This is a coordinated attack," Delegate Morodak declared. His forearms waved with agitation. "The humans are sabotaging us from a distance. They are taking revenge for their expulsion." Ambassador Ithasol rose slowly from her seat. She was very old now, her fur gray and thin, but her voice was still strong. "They are doing nothing," she said. "That is the point. They are simply no longer helping us." "Helping us?" High Chancellor Vextron laughed, though it sounded forced. "They were parasites. They took more than they gave." Thesol activated her personal display. Data and images appeared in the air above the council chamber. Charts and graphs and numbers that told a story no one wanted to hear. "In the past century," she said, "human engineers designed and built 63% of all interstellar infrastructure currently in use. Human medical teams eradicated for galaxy-wide plagues. Human diplomats negotiated peace in 847 conflicts. She paused to let the numbers sink in. Human military forces responded to 91% of all piracy and invasion threats. Often they responded before local governments even knew that danger existed. The chamber was silent. We expelled them because they would not share their military secrets, Ithasol continued. We never asked ourselves why they kept those secrets. We never wondered what they were protecting us from. Before anyone could respond, the lights in the chamber flickered. A priority alert flashed across every display. Red warning symbols appeared everywhere. Deep space sensors had detected something emerging from the void between galaxies. Something massive. Something that had not been seen in over 10,000 years. Ithasol felt her heart sink. She had read the ancient records. She knew what was coming. The harvesters had returned, and the humans who might have protected them were gone. "What is that?" Vextorin demanded, staring at the sensor readings. "What are we looking at?" Ithasol turned to face him. Her large dark eyes were filled with sorrow. "That," she said quietly, "is the reason humans kept their military secrets. That is what they have been preparing to fight. For the past 100 years." She looked around the chamber at the frightened faces of 1,000 species. "We just sent away the only people who know how to stop them." The first harvester attack came without warning. The Fentari homeworld, a beautiful planet of crystal towers and floating cities, was destroyed in 6 hours. 3 billion souls gone. The Fentari fleet was one of the largest in the galaxy. They had 5,000 warships, each one armed with the most advanced weapons their scientists could create. They believed they could defend their world against any threat. They were wrong. The harvesters came in ships that looked like mountains of black metal. Each one was larger than a city. They moved through space like slow, patient predators. And when they reached the Fentari homeworld, they did not fight. They fed. Delegate Moradak died on the bridge of his flagship. He had led his fleet against the harvesters personally, believing that courage and firepower would be enough. His last transmission was a scream that cut off suddenly. The Galactic HFY watched in horror as the recordings played on their displays. They saw the harvester ships descend on cities. They saw buildings crumble. They saw people running, screaming, dying. And they saw something worse. They saw the harvesters taking prisoners. Millions of Fentari were dragged aboard the black ships, still alive. The harvesters did not just kill, they harvested. They took living beings for purposes that no one wanted to imagine. "What are those things?" High Chancellor Vextorin whispered. His scales had turned pale, almost white. "Where did they come from?" Ambassador Ithasol stepped forward. She carried a data chip in her small, furry hand. "The harvesters are ancient," she said. Her voice was steady, though her hands trembled. "They are older than any civilization in the known galaxy. They come from the void between stars, the dark spaces where no light reaches." She inserted the chip into the central display. Ancient images appeared, records from 10,000 years ago. They showed the same black ships, the same devastation, the same horror. Every 10,000 years they emerged to feed, Ithasol continued. The last time they came, they destroyed over 100 species before they vanished back into the void. "How were they stopped?" Vextorin demanded. Ithasol pointed to a section of the ancient records. Most of it was corrupted, unreadable after so many millennia. But fragments remained. And those fragments showed something that made the council gasp. Human soldiers. Human ships. Humans fighting the harvesters in battles that shook entire star systems. 10,000 years ago, humans fought the harvesters alone, Ithasol said. They drove them back. They saved the galaxy, though no one remembers anymore. "That is impossible," Vextorin said. "Humans have only been a spacefaring species for 300 years. That is what we believed." Ithasol shook her head slowly. "The records suggest otherwise. Humans have been watching the stars for a very long time. They knew the harvesters would return. They have been preparing, and they can stop them again," Vextorin said. Hope flickered in his eyes. "We must contact Earth immediately. We must ask for their help." The council sent their first message that day. It was filled with apologies and pleas. It promised to restore humanity's place in the Galactic Union. It offered anything the humans wanted in exchange for protection. The message received no response. They sent a second message, more desperate than the first. This one was returned with a single line of text. This matter is outside our jurisdiction. Meanwhile, the harvesters continued their advance. They destroyed the Zealothi colony on Pentax 7. They consumed the Minthery shipyards at Nexus Station. They swept through the outer rim like a dark tide, leaving nothing but dead worlds in their wake. High Chancellor Vexterin made a decision. He would go to the human border personally. He would beg if he had to. His ship traveled for 3 days, transmitting surrender codes and pleas for mercy the entire way. When he reached the edge of human space, he was met by a single vessel. It was small, barely larger than a shuttle. It looked like nothing compared to the great warship that carried the Chancellor. But Vexterin knew that human ships were different inside than they appeared outside. He had heard rumors of weapons that could crack planets, shields that could stop any attack. He hoped those rumors were true. A figure appeared on his view screen. It was Ambassador Linda Morrison, looking exactly as she had on the day of the vote. Her gray hair was neat, her eyes were calm, and her expression gave nothing away. Ambassador Morrison, Vexterin said. His voice cracked slightly. We were wrong. We need your help. Please, name your price. Anything you want. Linda was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke, and her voice was neither angry nor cruel. It was simply tired. There's no price, Chancellor. Not because we are generous, but because you have nothing we want? Then you will let the galaxy burn out of spite. Vexterin could not keep the desperation from his voice. No. Linda's expression softened slightly. We will do what we have always done. We will fight the harvesters. We will protect what we can, but not for you. Not anymore. She held up a small data chip. These are evacuation coordinates. Any species that wishes to shelter in human space will be accepted as refugees. You will have no political power, no vote, no influence. You will be guests in our house, living by our rules. Vexterin stared at the chip. His mind raced with thoughts of pride and dignity and the honor of his species. Then he thought of the 3 billion Fentari who had died screaming. And if we refuse, he asked quietly, then you are free to face the harvesters on your own, as you wished. The High Chancellor of the Galactic Council, ruler of 1,000 worlds, looked at the small human woman on his screen. He saw no anger in her eyes, no satisfaction. Only a quiet, terrible resolve. Why? He whispered. Why did you never tell us what you were truly doing? We tried. Linda's voice was sad now. In the beginning, we explained everything. We showed your predecessors the ancient records. We offered to train your militaries, share our strategies. Do you know what they did? Vexterin shook his head. They laughed at us. They called us paranoid savages who saw monsters in the dark. They said we were trying to frighten them into giving us power. Linda's jaw tightened. So we stopped explaining. We did what we had to do. We built our fleets in secret. We trained our soldiers where no one could see. We prepared for the day when the harvesters would return. And we expelled you instead of thanking you. Yes, Linda nodded slowly. We tried to protect a galaxy that did not want our protection. We will not make that mistake again. She leaned forward slightly. Those who come to us will be saved. The rest will face the consequences of their choices. She ended the transmission. Her ship turned and vanished into the darkness of human space. Vexterin sat alone on the bridge of his warship, holding the data chip in his trembling hands. Behind him, his crew waited in silence. After a long moment, the Chancellor spoke. Set a course for the nearest human border station. Transmit our acceptance of their terms. Chancellor, his first officer said carefully, our people may see this as surrender. Our honor means nothing if we are all dead. Vexterin stood up, suddenly looking very old. Send the message. Tell our people to evacuate. Tell them the humans will protect us. He looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, The harvesters were coming closer. Even though we do not deserve it? Across the galaxy, ships streamed toward human space like rivers flowing to the sea. They were not warships. They were refugee vessels. Passenger liners that had been designed for luxury tours were now packed with frightened families. Cargo haulers that once carried goods now carried people, huddled together in dark holds. Small, personal craft, barely large enough for one family, limped through space on failing engines, held together by hope and desperation. The harvesters advanced steadily behind them. World after world fell to the black ships. The great powers of the Galactic Council threw everything they had at the invaders. They accomplished nothing. Their weapons bounced off harvester shields like raindrops off stone. Captain Daniel Cruz stood on the bridge of the Earth vessel steadfast. His ship was old, a border patrol cruiser that had seen better days. But it was strong and reliable, and right now, that was what the refugees needed. His orders were simple. Process refugees. Maintain order. Watch for harvester scouts. Let everyone through who came in peace. Daniel had expected chaos. He had prepared for riots, for fights, for desperate people doing desperate things. Instead, he found something different. He found quiet desperation. Beings who had lost everything, who had watched their homes burn, who had seen family members taken by the harvesters. They came to human space not with demands, but with trembling hope. Captain, his communications officer called out, "Incoming transmission. Zealothy transport, designation Whisper of Dawn." Daniel nodded. "Put them through." A crackling voice filled the bridge. "This is the Zealothy transport Whisper of Dawn. We carry 18,000 refugees. We request sanctuary." Daniel checked his screens. The transport was in bad shape. Its engines were failing. Hull breaches had been patched with emergency sealant. It would never survive another jump through hyperspace. Whisper of Dawn. This is Captain Cruz of the Steadfast. Reduce speed and prepare for docking. We will take your passengers aboard. There was a pause on the other end. Then the Zealothy captain spoke again, and his voice was thick with emotion. Acknowledged Steadfast. "Thank you. May your stars shine eternally." Daniel recognized the phrase. It was a formal blessing, one that Zealothy captains reserved for beings they considered truly worthy of respect. 6 months ago, this captain's government had voted to expel humanity from the galaxy. Daniel did not mention this. He simply did his job. The refugees came aboard in long, silent lines. Zealothy families with children clutching their parents' hands. Elderly beings who could barely walk. Young ones who stared at everything with wide, frightened eyes. A human medic named Carol Adams met them at the airlock. She had been working 16-hour shifts for weeks, treating injuries and illnesses and the wounds of beings who had escaped horrors she could barely imagine. "Welcome to the Steadfast," she told each group as they came through. "You are safe now. Please follow the markers to the processing center." A young Zealothy male stopped in front of her. He was thin and tired, with scales that had lost their shine. He asked, his voice was barely a whisper, "Why? What? Why are you helping us? We treated your people badly. We voted against you. We said terrible things about humans." Tears formed in his large eyes. "Why do you not turn us away?" Carol looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached out and gently touched his arm. "Because helping people is not a reward for good behavior," she said. "It is just what we do. It is who we are." The young Zealothy stared at her. Then he bowed his head and walked on, following the others to safety. On the refugee processing station called Hope's Landing, Dr. Karen Murray worked in a medical center that never closed. She had been a military physician before the expulsion, stationed on various alien worlds. She had treated more alien species than human patients in her career. Now, when those same species came to her, broken, frightened, sick, wounded, a young Minthari child was brought to her one day. The child had been injured during the escape from her homeworld. One of her tentacles was badly damaged. She was in terrible pain. Karen worked carefully, using techniques she had learned over 20 years of treating alien patients. The child's mother watched from across the room, her own tentacles wrapped tightly Aro. And herself, as Karen finished the treatment, the child looked up at her with large, dark eyes. "Why are you helping us?" she asked. It was the same question the young Zealothi had asked. Karen was beginning to hear it often. "'Cause you needed help," Karen said simply. "But my people were mean to your people. My mother says we did bad things." Karen smiled gently. "Being kind is not something you earn. It is something you give. And right now, you need kindness." The child's mother began to cry. She covered her face with her tentacles, her whole body shaking with sobs. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I am so sorry for everything." Karen walked over and sat beside her. "It is okay," she said quietly. "You are here now. You are safe. That is what matters." Far from Hope's Landing, Admiral Patricia Blake commanded the Human Defense Fleet from the bridge of the carrier Endurance. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had spent her entire life preparing for this moment. On the tactical display before her, she could see the harvester movements across the galaxy. Red dots representing the enemy. Blue dots representing what remained of galactic civilization. The blue dots were shrinking every day. "They are avoiding human space," her aide observed. He was a young lieutenant named Sam Torres, fresh from the academy. "They attack everywhere else, but they do not come near our borders." "They remember," Patricia said quietly. 10,000 years, and they still remember what we did to them. Will they attack us eventually?" Patricia nodded slowly. "When they have consumed everything else, when there's nothing left but us, then they will come, and we will be ready." The Admiral turned to face her young officer. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were hard. "We have been ready for a century, Lieutenant. We never stopped preparing. We never forgot what was coming." She gestured at the display. "The Council thought we were hoarding weapons out of greed or paranoia. They never understood that every ship, every soldier, every weapon we built was for this moment. They understand now." "Yes," Patricia's voice was sad. "Too late for most of them. But not too late for all of them. We will save who we can." A message arrived on her personal display. It was from Hope's Landing, the largest refugee station. Patricia read it slowly. The message was signed by representatives of 93 species. 93 different peoples who had survived the harvester attacks and found shelter in human space. Many of them had voted against humanity. Many of them had said cruel things, done cruel things. The message was simple. "We're sorry. We were wrong." "Thank you." Patricia read it twice. Then she saved it and returned her attention to the tactical display. She would respond later. For now, there was work to do. The harvesters were still coming. Every day they grew closer to human space. Every day the refugee numbers increased. Every day the burden on human resources grew heavier. But the human fleet held the line. Human soldiers stood guard. Human doctors treated the sick and wounded. Human engineers kept the stations running, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, the harvesters waited. They had consumed most of the galaxy. Only one prize remained, the species that had defeated them once before. Humanity. The final battle was coming. Everyone knew it. The humans prepared quietly, moving ships into position, stockpiling weapons and supplies. The refugees watched from their shelters, wondering if this time would be different, wondering if the humans could save them again. "Admiral." Blake stood on her bridge and looked out at the stars. Soon, she whispered to herself. Very soon. The waiting was almost over. The final battle came 3 years after the harvesters returned by then. The Galactic Council no longer existed. Most of its member species were extinct or reduced to scattered refugees in human space. The great powers that had voted to expel humanity were memories now, their homeworlds silent and dead. Drifting through the void like forgotten graves, the harvesters had consumed 90% of the galaxy's inhabited worlds. They had grown fat and powerful on the lives of trillions. Their black ships numbered in the millions, a tide of darkness that covered entire star systems. And now, finally, they turned toward the last remaining prize. The last civilization still standing. The only ones who had ever defeated them. Humanity. The human fleet gathered at the edge of their space. 4,000 warships arranged in precise formation, their hulls gleaming in the light of distant stars. Behind them lay the refugee worlds, billions of beings from hundreds of species, watching the skies and praying to whatever gods they believed in. On the bridge of the flagship Horizon, Admiral Patricia Blake stood at the center of a holographic display. The approaching Harvester Armada filled the entire screen, so vast that individual ships were just tiny dots in a sea of darkness. "Oh." "Ships report ready," Admiral Lieutenant Torres announced. His voice was steady, though his hands trembled slightly. Patricia nodded. She activated the fleet-wide communication system. Her voice would be heard on every ship by every soldier. "This is Admiral Blake. For 3 years we have watched the galaxy burn. We have taken in the survivors, the broken, the desperate. We have done what we could." She paused, looking at the display. The Harvester Armada was vast, larger than anything humanity had ever faced. Larger than anything any species had ever faced. Today, we do what we must. We are not fighting for glory or revenge. We are fighting for survival. Ours and theirs. She gestured toward the refugee worlds behind them. Billions of beings from 1,000 species have placed their trust in us. They came to us with nothing but hope. We will not fail them. "All batteries charged," Torres reported. "Fighters standing by. All stations ready." Patricia took a deep breath. Her hand moved to the command console. "Then let us remind the Harvesters why they feared us." The battle began with fire. Human ships surged forward, weapons blazing. Energy beams cut through the darkness, striking Harvester vessels and tearing through their shields. Missiles streaked across space, leaving trails of light behind them. Fighters swarmed around the larger ships, like angry bees defending their hive. The Harvesters responded with overwhelming force. Their black ships fired weapons that turned human vessels into expanding clouds of debris. Their shields absorbed attacks that would have destroyed anything else. They pressed forward with terrible patience, confident in their numbers. But humanity did not break, Captain. Daniel Cruz commanded the Steadfast from its battle position on the fleet's right flank. Old patrol ship had been refitted for combat, its hull reinforced and its weapons upgraded. It was still not a match for a Harvester vessel, but Daniel did not care about matching them. He cared about stopping them. "Target the command ship," he ordered. "All forward batteries, fire at will." The Steadfast shook as it discharged its weapons. Around it, other human ships did the same, concentrating their fire on a single Harvester command vessel. The black ship's shields flickered under the assault. Then the Harvesters fired back. The blast hit the Steadfast amidships, tearing through armor and bulkheads. Alarms screamed. Damage reports flooded the bridge. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 12, someone shouted. "Engines failing. We are losing power." Daniel gripped his command chair. The ship shuddered around him, dying. But on the display, he could see the Harvester command ship. Its shields were down. Its hull was exposed. "All hands," he said calmly. "Abandon ship. Get to the escape pods." Captain Torres said, "What about you?" Daniel smiled slightly. "Someone needs to finish this." He aimed his crippled vessel at the Harvester command ship and pushed the engines to full power. The Steadfast screamed through space, trailing fire and debris. His last transmission was simple. "For everyone we could not save." Steadfast struck the Harvester command ship at full speed. Both vessels exploded in a ball of light that could be seen across the battlefield. On Hope's Landing, Dr. Karen Murray watched the battle on the station's displays. She'd been treating wounded soldiers for hours, working until her hands shook and her eyes blurred. Then the alarms sounded. Harvester landing pods were entering the atmosphere. Karen looked around the medical center. Patients filled every bed. Staff ran back and forth, trying to keep everyone alive. She made a decision. "Everyone who can walk, get to the emergency shelters," she ordered. "Everyone who cannot walk, we will carry you." One of her nurses grabbed her arm. "Doctor, what about you?" Karen picked up a rifle from a fallen soldier's belongings. She had learned to shoot during her military service. She had hoped never to use that skill again. "Someone needs to buy time for the evacuation," she said. She joined the defense line outside the station. Alongside soldiers and volunteers, she faced the harvester landing pods as they crashed to the ground. She fired until her rifle overheated, then picked up another and kept firing. The battle at Hope's Landing lasted for hours. When it was over, Karen was still standing. Her leg was badly wounded, and she would walk with a limp for the rest of her life. But the station was safe. The refugees were alive. In space, the battle raged on. Admiral Blake directed the fleet from the Horizon's bridge, her voice calm even as ships exploded around her. She watched friends die. She watched vessels she had commanded for years vanish in balls of fire, and she never wavered. "All ships converge on the Queen's flagship," she ordered. "Everything we have now." The human fleet turned as one, focusing all their weapons on a single target. The Harvester Queen ship was enormous, larger than a moon. Its black hull covered with weapons that could destroy planets. The Queen had led the Harvesters for 10,000 years. She had consumed countless civilizations. She had never known defeat, until now. Human ships swarmed around her vessel, firing without pause. Many were destroyed, but others took their place. They fought with a fury that seemed impossible, a determination that defied all logic. In the 17th hour of the battle, the Horizon itself led the final assault. Admiral Blake stood on her bridge as her ship plunged toward the Queen's vessel, all weapons firing. "Shields are failing," Torres reported. "Keep firing. Hull breaches on multiple decks." "Keep firing, Admiral. We cannot keep firing." The Horizon struck the Queen's ship at the same moment as 17 other human vessels. The combined explosion lit up the entire star system. A flash of light visible from worlds light years away. The Harvester Queen died in that explosion. Her ship crumbled into fragments. And across the battlefield, the remaining Harvesters stopped fighting. They paused, confused, lost without their leader. Then they began to flee. The human fleet pursued them to the edge of the system, destroying as many as they could. But most escaped, scattering into the void between galaxies. They would not return. Humanity had broken them not once but twice, and this time the survivors would carry the memory of their defeat into the darkest corners of existence. The battle was over. The galaxy was saved. On what remained of the Horizon, Admiral Patricia Blake sat in her damaged command chair. Around her, the bridge crew wept and laughed and held each other. They had survived. Against all odds, they had survived. "Casualty reports coming in," Admiral Torres said quietly. His face was streaked with tears. "We lost over half the fleet. Captain Cruz is confirmed dead. The Steadfast is gone." Patricia closed her eyes. She thought of Daniel Cruz, who had given his life to destroy a Harvester command ship. She thought of all the others who had died today. "But we won," she said softly, "and the refugees are safe." A message arrived from Hope's Landing. It was signed by representatives of 93 species. It read, "We are sorry. We were wrong. Thank you." The same message they had sent before. But this time, it meant something different. This time, it meant everything. Patricia read the message twice. Then she saved it and looked out at the stars. Humanity had walked away from a galaxy that did not want them. And when that galaxy needed them most, humanity had come back anyway. Not for revenge. Not for power. Not even for gratitude. Simply because it was the right thing to do. 50 years later, the new Galactic Council convened for the first time. It was smaller than its predecessor, representing the survivors of a shattered galaxy slowly rebuilding. Ambassador Linda Morrison, now elderly but still sharp-eyed, took her seat among them. "This council exists because of humanity," High Chancellor Ithasol said. "It seems right that you should lead it." Linda shook her head. "No, we will participate, but not lead. You must learn to stand on your own." She looked around at the faces of 100 species, survivors all. "We walked away once because we had to. Now you understand what you lost." She smiled slightly. "Now we can truly work together. Not as protectors and protected, but as equals." The new Galactic Council opened its first session with a moment of silence for the fallen. Then, together, they began building a new future, and humanity stood among them. where they had always belonged.